I want to bring you some breaking news, and that is we've heard directly from one of the Israeli hostages freed by Hamas in the last 24 hours. Have a look.
My mom is speaking about the time there. She's telling us about sharing food with the people, that the people, when she first arrived, when they told them that they are Muslims and they're not going to hurt them, and that they ate the same food that the Hamas was eating.
That woman interpreting there for her 85-year-old mother. I would just advise a bit of caution when we listen to this sort of material, because they'll be saying, telling people what's gone on. They'll also be very mindful of the welfare of the more than 200 hostages still held captive in Gaza by Hamas. So keep all that in mind, and we'll get some thoughts on that now from Yossi Cooper-Wasser, who is the former head of research at the IDF Intelligence Corps. He joins us from Tel Aviv. Thanks for joining us, Yossi. First up, you might have just heard that news as well and heard that snippet of information we got from a freed hostage. What would you have to say about both the reality that some hostages have now been freed and what they might be able to tell the world and tell the Israeli authorities?
Oh, thank you for having me. Well, first of all, we are very happy that 2 more hostages were freed. That makes it 4, and every person is a world of its own. But as you said, we are still missing 220 hostages that are in the hands of Hamas, and we are still trying to recuperate, and it's very difficult from the horrific footage of what happened on October 7th. It's terrible, and every day new footage is coming out, and it's devastating to live again and again the horrors of 7th October, and also the courage and bravery of those people that were involved in regaining the control of this territory that was under Hamas terrorists' control for a while. In an attempt to kill and abduct as many people as they can. That's what happened there, and it's terrible. And they did it in such a brutal and vicious way that when we live again and again those pictures coming out of those atrocities, it's devastating. Really, it really is, and it strengthens our determination that we need to eliminate Hamas in Gaza. We cannot live next to Hamas in Gaza. We will find a way to do that. We are prepared to do that. The army is ready. Everybody's waiting for the order to move. And in the meanwhile, we prepare the battlefield. We carry out air attacks against the Hamas in Gaza, ask the Palestinian population to leave the areas where the fight is going to take place and move south. Some of them do, some of them don't, because Hamas doesn't allow them to. And we shouldn't definitely fall prey to this cheap, manipulative act of Hamas by releasing the hostages and trying to portray itself as a humanitarian organization.
Yossi, this is what I want to get to, right? I mean, the atrocities I've talked about at the top of the program are unspeakable and should never have been forgotten, and Israel has to do everything it can to make sure that never happens again. But at the moment, the critical factor is the hostages. It's wonderful to see some hostages freed, but we need all of them freed immediately. Tell us about the strategic game being played here, the propaganda game being played here by Hamas, because they're obviously freeing small numbers of hostages to try and help make themselves look like reasonable operators while they work to turn, successfully in many cases, turn public opinion against Israel.
Yes, this is the cheap manipulation that I'm talking about. And we should not follow this track. We are determined to release the prisoners, all of them, not one by one. And we demand that they do that. First of all, the civilians that were not supposed to be taken hostage, and many of them are children of really young age. Some of them are toddlers. It's unbelievable that they still keep them. And we have to remember that first and foremost. And secondly, all this idea of taking hostages is unacceptable. And the way to handle it is not to wait for Hamas to release them, but to act forcefully in order to make it clear to Hamas that if they want to stay alive, they would rather protect those hostages and make sure that they still able to release them on time before we finish the job here and get rid of Hamas in Gaza.
Yossi, you talk about finish the job, and that is getting rid of Hamas in Gaza, and most thinking people would support that. But the tragic reality is surely undeniable, isn't it? That when you go into Gaza, if there is a ground incursion, there will be civilians killed, there will be Israeli soldiers killed, and more than likely hostages killed as well.
All of these eventualities can happen, of course. We realize that it's not going to be a walk in the park. It's going to be costly, especially for our soldiers. That's what we are worried about most, and it might endanger the hostages. That's also true. And we are fully aware that the Palestinians living in Gaza are also going to be in harm's way. And we ask them to leave. We ask them again and again. For 2 weeks now, we are asking them to leave. Many of them did. Many of them are still staying there because Hamas doesn't allow them to leave.
Yeah.
They use them as human shields. We understand that, but
it's despicable.
Be hesitative about the final goal. It is to change fundamentally the situation. We are fighting here not only for us, first and foremost for us, but this is a war on behalf of the entire civilized world. If we don't succeed here in eliminating Hamas in Gaza, the repercussions all over the world are going to be immense. We have to succeed, and we have to do it with a ground incursion, because there's no other way to convince Hamas. If they decide to give up and surrender now, wonderful. But I saw some of their declaration of the last day.
That won't be happening. That won't be happening. Yossi, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for your insights and your frankness. Yossi Cooper was there, who used to head up research for the IDF Intelligence Corps.